Preparing the Pyro system for use. The Pyro employs a 50 horsepower air-cooled diesel motor for reliable, quick-starting power. Ideally, preparing the Pyro system for use is done daily as part of your routine apparatus check. Start by simply checking the fuel and engine oil levels and check the booster tank water level. Insert the proper amount of aggregate into the aggregate vessel. Because the aggregate vessel is normally flooded with water, you will notice water pouring from the spout as it is displaced by the aggregate. Remember, the aggregate vessel works under pressure. Be sure the cap of the aggregate is securely tightened to specifications. If you do not know the proper procedure to fill the aggregate vessel, do not proceed. Instead, seek the help of someone who knows how the system works. Starting the Pyro system. To start the Pyro, turn the system's stop button slightly clockwise to release it. This will turn the electrical system on and cock the stop button so that the system can be shut down. Start the engine as if it were a keyed switch in a car. Once the engine is running, the low pressure light will go out, indicating that the system is ready for use. Operating the Pyro system. To operate the Pyro position the lance in the desired location. Take a firm and stable stance before activating the water trigger. The large trigger controls the water application, and the small trigger controls the aggregate flow. The engine will ramp up to high speed. It will take a few seconds for the water and aggregate to travel the length of the hose towards the nozzle tip. Once piercing or cutting operation is complete, release the aggregate trigger and continue flowing just water by continuing to hold the large water trigger. Releasing the water trigger will cause the system to go back to idle. Turn the engine ignition switch to off to cease the operation. Emergency operation. Push and hold the safety button as you push the water button, which will activate the engine to ramp up and start the water flow. You must maintain pressure on both buttons to keep operating. To commence a piercing or cutting operation, push both the water on and abrasive on buttons on the control panel to activate the system. The engine will ramp up to high speed. Release the abrasive switch to stop the flow of aggregate. Release the water switch to allow the engines to throttle back to idle. Turn the engine ignition switch to off to cease the operation. Flush the system after use. Always allow water to flow for at least 1 minute to enable the flushing of all aggregate from the hose reel line. Do not operate the smaller aggregate trigger while flushing the system.